Welcome to Lukebook Money, built for Singapore. Today, the quiet taxi uncle worth more than almost everyone in his back seat. And exactly how he did it. You probably got into a taxi recently. And the quiet old uncle driving you may have been worth more than almost everyone in his back seat. It is one of the most quietly mind-bending truths about money in Singapore. And it is sitting in the driver's seat of a taxi, right now. He doesn't look it. Plain shirt, simple watch, a thermos of kopi on the dashboard. Just another uncle, making a living. Take a real look at him at the next red light. The calm on his face is not resignation. It is the calm of a man who stopped worrying about money years ago. You would never, in 100 years, guess that this man has quietly built a fortune of around $3 million. Not from a windfall. Not from crypto. Not from a rich family. From driving a taxi, and one rare, powerful habit. And the passengers he ferries around, the ones in suits, with the nice bags and the big job titles. Many of them are worth far less than he is. We are trained to read wealth from the outside. The watch, the car, the address. And those signals fool us, almost every single time. His story quietly destroys one of the biggest myths we carry about money. That your job, and your income, decide your wealth. We are taught, from the day we are born, that more income equals more wealth. It is drilled into us. And it is one of the most expensive half-truths there is. Because they don't. Not even close. And by the end of this, you will never look at a taxi uncle, or a fancy job title, the same way again. Because what Uncle Lim understood, that most high earners never do, is that wealth has almost nothing to do with how much you make. This is not financial advice. It is the story of how an ordinary man, in an unglamorous job, quietly outbuilt almost everyone he ever drove. So buckle up. Because the quiet man in the front seat is about to teach you more about money than most finance degrees ever will. Part 1. Meet the man behind the wheel. Let's call him Uncle Lim. He is 65, and he has driven a taxi on these roads for 35 years. He has spent more hours in that driver's seat than most people spend at any job in their lives. The taxi was never just a job. It was his small business. He has watched thousands of passengers come and go. The rich-looking ones, and the genuinely rich ones. And he learned fast that they are rarely the same people. He never went to university. He started driving in his late 20s, after a few odd jobs that went nowhere. He grew up with very little. He learned early that money was not something you flaunted. It was something you quietly kept, and protected. And somewhere in his early 30s, something flipped a switch. He realized the rich do not earn their way to wealth. They invest their way there. Driving suited him. No boss over his shoulder. His income tied directly to his effort. And endless quiet hours to think about the future he was building. His income was never high. In a good month, after fuel and rental, he might clear $4,000 or $5,000. In a bad month, much less. So he made a decision that would quietly change his entire life. He chose to live as if he earned half of what he actually did. On a modest, unpredictable income that took real discipline. Some weeks were lean. But the rule never changed. Save first. Always. An unpredictable income breaks most people. They overspend in the good months and panic in the lean ones. He did the opposite. He saved hardest when times were good. He works long hours. He knows every shortcut on the island. He has seen this country change, one fare at a time. 12, 14 hours a day, behind the wheel. Eating in the car. Resting at the stands. He treated every shift like a man building something. And in a way, he was. With every fare, he was not just earning a few dollars. He was buying tiny pieces of Singapore's biggest companies. Late at night, after his last fare, He would count the day's takings at his small kitchen table. And the first notes off the pile always went into savings. He knew this island like the back of his hand. And somewhere along those endless roads, he had quietly mapped his own way to financial freedom too. He lives in a modest flat that he paid off long ago. He cooks at home. He does not drink, or gamble, or chase the latest phone. His meals were simple. Economy rice, a kopi, food from the hawker center. He never once felt he was missing out. He was playing a longer game. No car loan, the taxi was the company's. No mortgage, once the flat was paid. No credit card debt, ever. He simply refused to owe anyone. To him, every dollar not wasted was not a sacrifice. It was a tiny worker, sent out to earn for him, forever. He could already picture the army he was building. If you met him, you would see a humble, hard-working uncle. You would never imagine the number sitting quietly in his accounts. That gap, between the humble man you see and the fortune you cannot, was not luck. For Uncle Lim, it was the entire design. He never told a soul. Not his neighbors, not his kopi friends, not even most of his family. Real wealth, he believed, should make no noise at all. Because Uncle Lim is the purest example of a phrase you should tattoo on your brain. The millionaire next door. The famous research on real millionaires found the same thing, again and again. Most are not doctors or lawyers. They are ordinary people, in ordinary jobs, who simply save hard. The teacher. The plumber. The small shop owner. The driver. Wealth, it turns out, quietly loves the discipline and the unremarkable. These are people who would never call themselves wealthy, even as their net worth quietly passes 7 figures. The label was never the point. The freedom was. Part 2. So let's open his books. And prepare to be surprised. First, his home. A modest flat, fully paid off, worth around $550,000 today. He bought that flat young, paid it down aggressively, and was free of housing debt before 50. A paid roof, for the entire second half of his life. A paid-off home changes everything. With no rent and no mortgage, his cost of living was almost laughably low. Nearly his whole income was free to invest. Then his CPF. Decades of contributions and top-ups have quietly grown it to around $280,000, paying him a guaranteed income for life. He treated his CPF like a rock-solid bond. A safe, guaranteed return, quietly building a pension in the background, while his shares took the bigger swings. And then, the part that would stop you in your tracks. His investment portfolio. Built one quiet day at a time, over 35 years. He started with almost nothing. A few $100s, set aside from his daily takings, into his very first shares. It felt tiny. It felt almost pointless. 35 years of small, consistent deposits. No single one felt important. But stacked together, day after day, they built something genuinely enormous. Today it is worth around $2.2 million. From a taxi driver who never earned a high salary in his life. Look at what a steady $1,500 a month becomes, compounding quietly for 35 years. See the shape of that curve. Flat, almost discouraging, for the first 10 years. Then it bends, and in the final decade, it goes nearly vertical. That is the part nobody has the patience to reach. The boring decade, where it feels like nothing is happening. He drove straight through it. 2.2 million, from a man who never cracked 5,000 a month. If that does not rearrange how you think about income and wealth, nothing will. And it quietly pays him around $90,000 a year, in dividends, without him lifting a finger. $90,000 a year, in dividends, now arriving while he sleeps. That is more than double his best ever year of driving. His money out-earns the man. Sit with that. The dividends alone are nearly double his best ever year behind the wheel. His money now works far, far harder than he ever could. Add a cash cushion, subtract his debts, which are zero, and Uncle Lim's net worth lands at around $3 million. Spread across his flat, his CPF, his portfolio, and his cash. No debt anywhere. Diversified, sturdy, and entirely his own. Nobody has a single claim on it. $3 million, and not a cent owed to anyone. That last part, owing nothing, is a kind of wealth that never shows on a balance sheet, but matters most of all. $3 million. Held by the uncle you would have tipped a couple of dollars and forgotten by the next traffic light. We tip a driver a couple of dollars and feel generous. We have no idea we might be tipping a man who could buy the entire taxi company. The contrast is almost poetic. The man we are conditioned to overlook completely is the wealthiest person most of his passengers will ever sit beside. Now think about the passengers in his back seat. The young banker. The lawyer. The executive on a six-figure salary. Picture the young banker in his back seat. On paper, a star. 150,000 a year, maybe more. Surely far wealthier than the uncle driving him. But look closer. The leased Continental car. The rented condo in town. The watch on installments. The lifestyle that swallows the whole salary, every single month. And Uncle Lim is never bitter, or smug. He chats happily with the high flyers in his back seat, quietly knowing what they do not. That he has already won. Many of them, despite earning 3 or 4 times what he ever did, have a fraction of his net worth. Some have less than nothing. Strip out his debts, and that impressive banker's net worth might be near zero. He earns a fortune, and keeps almost none of it. So who is actually richer? The man with the big salary and nothing saved? Or the quiet uncle with $3 million and no boss left to answer to? This is not a dig at bankers, or any high earner. Plenty are brilliant savers. But a big income is only a tool. It builds nothing, on its own. Big salary, big condo, big car, and a big pile of debt holding it all together. They look rich. He simply is rich. Income is what comes in. Wealth is what you keep, and grow. The banker mastered the first. Uncle Lim quietly mastered the second. A high income with low discipline is a bucket with a hole in it. You can pour more and more in, and somehow it is always nearly empty. The cruelest joke in money is that the things that scream wealth are often the very things quietly preventing it. The car. The watch. The address. Part 3. So how on earth did he do it? On a taxi driver's income, no less. The secret was never the size of his income. It was what he did with every single dollar of it. And it started with one daily ritual. Most people save whatever happens to be left at the end of the month. Which, for most, is nothing. Uncle Lim flipped the whole thing around. His real edge was not in his wallet. It was between his ears. He had decided early what enough looked like. And he never once let that number creep upward. Every day, his cash earnings came in. And before he spent a cent, he set a fixed amount aside. Pay yourself first, in its rawest form. He saved first, and spent only what was left. That one reversal, save first then spend, is the quiet hinge that nearly all real wealth turns on. The amount mattered less than the ritual. Some days $100. Some days 20. But every single day, something went in, before anything came out. Because his income was cash, in his hands, every day, the discipline was physical, and real. The savings happened before temptation ever could. Handling physical cash every day made it concrete. He could feel the notes he was setting aside. The discipline lived in his hands, not just his head. Most of us, paid by bank transfer, never feel our money. It arrives, and it leaves, like a number on a screen. He felt every dollar, and that made saving real. He lived on very little. Maybe $1,500 a month covered everything he truly needed. The rest went to work, in the market. Think about that gap. He might earn $4,000, and live on $1,500. That leaves a huge river of money, every month, to send into the market. He found a strange pride in living simply. A good plate of chicken rice. A quiet evening. Time with family. He genuinely did not want the expensive version of life. That gave him an enormous savings rate. Some months he invested more than half of everything he earned. Year, after year, after year. A savings rate like that is a superpower. Save half your income, and you are buying your freedom roughly twice as fast as someone who saves a tenth. And he never inflated his lifestyle. Better years did not buy a nicer car or a bigger flat. Better years simply meant a bigger sum going quietly into the market. Your savings rate is the closest thing to a financial superpower. It quietly decides how many years you must work, and how many you get to keep for yourself. And where did it go? Nowhere clever. The 3 local banks. The Singapore Market Index. A few solid property trusts. Boring, and built to last. He never tried to be clever. No hot tips. No penny stocks. No scheme a friend swore by. Just steady ownership of solid, dividend-paying businesses. Boring, in investing, is a compliment. The exciting stuff is usually where people lose money. The boring stuff, owned patiently, is where fortunes are quietly made. The 3 local banks paid him steady, growing dividends for decades. The index gave him the whole economy. The trust paid him rent, without a single tenant to manage. Every dividend that landed, he reinvested. He never once spent the income. He let it buy more, which paid more, which bought more again. The reinvesting is the quiet magic. Each dividend bought more shares. More shares paid more dividends. Which bought more again. A snowball, turning for decades. In year 1, his dividends might buy a single extra share. By year 30, they bought thousands. Those early, tiny reinvestments grew into the largest part of all. And through every crash, every scary headline, every recession, he did the one thing almost nobody manages. He did not sell. He kept buying. Now think how rare his com was. 97. 2003. 2008. 2020. Each one a wall of fear. Every time, the headlines screamed sell. Every time, ordinary people panicked and dumped shares at the bottom. Every time, Uncle Lin quietly kept buying. And because he bought when everyone was terrified, he scooped up shares cheaply, again and again. The crashes did not hurt him. They quietly made him richer. While the city panicked, he slept fine. He owned good businesses, he had no debt, and he knew, deep in his bones, that the market always eventually recovers. Every crash is a sale that terrifies everyone into walking out of the shop. He was the rare customer who walked in, basket ready, and quietly stocked up. That is the entire formula. A high savings rate, a boring portfolio, reinvested dividends, and the patience of a saint, repeated for decades. He also used his CPF wisely. Topping it up, letting it earn its safe 4%, building a guaranteed income floor underneath everything else. Notice what is missing. No secret. No genius. No real luck. Just a handful of simple actions, repeated with monk-like discipline, for 35 years. His first 100,000 took many slow, hard years. The first million took a couple of decades. But the third million arrived in just a few short years, almost on its own. Compounding is boring, right up until it is breathtaking. Most people quit before the breathtaking part. He could not explain a single financial term to you. But he understood the only 4 that ever mattered. Spend less. Own nothing. Own good things. And wait. And the beauty is, it compounds whether you are clever or not. The market did the heavy lifting. His only job was to keep feeding it, and to never interrupt it. Part 4. And here is why his story matters so much for you. Uncle Lim proves the lesson that the whole finance industry would rather you never learned. Wealth is built by habits, not by income. Run the numbers and it is almost shocking. A modest earner saving half passes a high earner saving nothing, usually within a decade, and then leaves them far behind. It is genuinely liberating once you grasp it. You do not need to become a banker to build a banker's net worth. You need the behavior, not the business card. The finance industry profits when you feel you need them and their expensive products. Uncle Lim's boring, do-it-yourself approach quietly threatens that whole model. A modest earner who saves and invests half will quietly crush a high earner who spends everything. It is not even a close contest, over time. So the question is never only, how much do I earn? The real question is, how much do I keep, and how hard does that money then go to work for me? Lifestyle inflation is how a top earner retires poorer than a disciplined driver. Each raise quietly funds a bigger life, instead of a bigger future. It happens silently. It means the excuse, I just don't earn enough to invest, is, for most people, simply not true. It is rarely about the income. It is about the gap. The trap that catches high earners is that a big income lets you afford big repayments. So they borrow more, spend more, and stay broke at a fancier address. The one lever almost fully in your control is your savings rate. Not the market. Not your salary. The gap between what you earn and spend. Guard it fiercely. Even a small, steady amount, given enough decades, becomes startling. Time, not timing, and certainly not a big salary, does almost all of the work. And it means you are surrounded, right now, by quiet millionaires you will never spot. The cleaner. The hawker. The bus captain. The taxi uncle. So the millionaires walking among us are almost all invisible. They drive normal cars, live in normal homes, and never feel the need to prove a single thing. The hawker who owns 3 properties. The cleaner with a 6-figure portfolio. The bus captain quietly retiring a millionaire. They are everywhere, once you know to look. The research found most millionaires live in ordinary homes, drive ordinary cars, and have never spent big to look the part. Uncle Lim, exactly to the letter. Meanwhile, plenty of the people who look the most successful are quietly drowning. Funding a rich-looking life with a river of debt. And the loudest, flashiest people are often the most fragile. One lost job, one bad year, and the whole expensive illusion can come crashing straight down. So be a little suspicious of the loudest displays of wealth. Very often, the bigger the show, the thinner the substance underneath it. There is a quiet desperation behind a lot of visible wealth. The pressure to keep up, to keep performing, to keep funding a life that was never really affordable. So we judge people exactly backwards. We respect the visible spending, and quietly pity the visible thrift. Uncle Lim's life turns that upside down. We give status to the wrong thing. We admire the spending, when we should quietly admire the saving. Uncle Lim never needed our admiration. He just needed the freedom. And he passed it down. His children grew up watching the discipline. They learned that wealth is quiet, patient, and built. Not flashed, borrowed, or performed. And be a little kinder, and a little more curious, about the quiet ones. The humble uncle, the thrifty auntie. You truly never know who you are talking to. Part 5. Now, let me be honest with you, because this story is easy to over-romanticize. First, Uncle Lim is the rare exception, not the average taxi driver. Most drivers, like most people, do not retire with $3 million. Plenty of taxi drivers struggle, work just as hard, and retire with very little. The job does not promise this. The habits, plus time, plus a little luck, do. So the takeaway is not, go drive a taxi. It is, whatever you earn, build a gap, and invest it relentlessly. The job is the setting. The habits are the story. He started young. He worked brutal hours. He stayed disciplined for 35 years. And he had decades of rising markets behind him. All of that had to line up. And those brutal hours had a real cost. Time away from family. The toll on his body. Wealth bought with health is not always a trade worth copying blindly. So take the discipline, but not the extremes. You do not need 14-hour days for decades. You need a steady gap, invested patiently, for a long time. Second, you do still need an income to save from. If you are barely covering rent and food, the answer is to grow your earnings first, then save the gap. If your income barely covers the basics today, your first job is not investing. It is raising your earning power, with skills, so a real gap can finally appear. For most people the fastest path is two-pronged. Raise your income with skills, and hold your lifestyle steady, so the gap between them quietly explodes. Third, and this matters. Do not copy the part where he worked himself to the bone, and never spent $1 on joy. That is not the goal. And please, do not miss the point and become a joyless miser. Uncle Lim's goal was never to suffer. It was to be free. Those are very different things. Wealth that costs you every relationship, every hobby, and your health, is a bad bargain. The aim is a full life, made secure. Not an empty one, made rich. The goal is not to die rich and exhausted. It is to build quiet security, and then to actually enjoy the freedom it buys you. He does enjoy his life now. He travels to see his grandchildren. He treats his old friends to kopi. He spends on what matters, and ignores what does not. Find your own balance between his discipline and a life actually lived. Build the freedom, yes. But remember to taste the years along the way. And this is education, not financial advice. Uncle Lim is a composite, built from very real Singapore drivers, real prices, and real, ordinary discipline. He is a composite, yes. But everything here is built from real Singapore drivers, real prices, and the very real, unglamorous power of decades of discipline. Take the principle, leave the extremes, and make it your own. That is how a story about one taxi driver quietly becomes a plan for your own life. So let's bring it home. A humble taxi uncle quietly outbuilt the bankers and executives he spent his life driving around. The same quiet story is unfolding all over this island. In hawker centers, in void decks, behind steering wheels. Fortunes, hidden in plain, humble sight. He spent a lifetime in the front seat, ferrying people who thought they were ahead of him. Quietly, mile after mile, he left almost every one of them behind. Not because of his job. Despite it. He took a modest, unglamorous income, and through sheer habit, turned it into real, lasting freedom. The most expensive habit in the world is trying to look rich. The cheapest, and most powerful, is quietly choosing to actually become it. He did not get lucky. He did not get a windfall. He got disciplined, and he got patient, and he gave it the one thing it needed most. Time. And the deepest lesson is this. Your job title does not decide your wealth. Your habits do. Quietly, daily, over a very long time. So stop measuring people, and yourself, by the salary, the car, or the title. Start measuring by the gap saved, and the years invested. That is the real scoreboard. The wealthy you can see are usually just the highly paid. The truly wealthy, the ones who own their time, almost always look completely, beautifully ordinary. Two people, same city, same decades. One chased the look of wealth. The other quietly built the real thing. Only one of them ever gets to stop worrying about money. So the next time a quiet uncle drives you home, remember. You genuinely cannot tell who is wealthy by looking. Not the car. Not the clothes. Not the job. It is oddly freeing, once it clicks. The moment you stop trying to impress strangers, you can pour all of that energy into quietly building the real thing. A simple habit to carry. When you see something flashy, quietly ask, is that wealth, or just a bill in a nice costume? The two look identical from the curb. The best part? His playbook needs no degree, no fancy career, and no big salary. Only a gap between what you earn and what you spend, invested, for years. If you want to begin, the order is simple. Build a small safety net. Clear any bad debt. Then automate an investment every month, and refuse to touch it. You do not need his exact numbers. You need his direction. Spend a bit less than you could. Invest a bit more than feels easy. Then repeat it for years. Start with whatever you have. $20. $100. Automate it into a low-cost index fund this week. Small, boring, and quietly the beginning of everything. Save a little more than feels comfortable. Buy boring, own it for decades, and reinvest everything. That is the entire secret, and it is available to you. It will feel slow. It will feel boring. That feeling is the price of admission. On the far side of all that boredom sits the freedom Uncle Lim lives in today. And the single most important move is simply to start. A small amount, today, beats a perfect plan you keep putting off until next year. Knowledge was never the hard part. You already know to spend less and invest the difference. The hard part is doing something boring, consistently, when no one is clapping. Do it long enough, and one day you could be the quiet one in the front seat, worth far more than anyone would ever guess. Because somewhere down the road, a young person will climb into your taxi, or pass you at the market, and have absolutely no idea who they are really looking at. And if you are young, you hold the one thing he can never get back. Time. Start now, even small, and your own curve will bend upward sooner than you would believe. Imagine reaching his age with no debt, a paid home, and an income that arrives whether you work or not. That quiet, unshakable peace is what the discipline was really for. If this changed how you see the people around you, share it with someone who thinks they will never be rich because of their job. Real wealth was never the car, the watch, or the corner office. It was always the quiet choices, made daily, by people humble enough to play the long game. So look again at the quiet people around you. The driver, the auntie, the cleaner. Some of them have already quietly won the game you are still anxious about playing. I'm Lukebook. Money, built for Singapore. Stay humble, stay invested, and let them underestimate you. Thanks for watching. If this made building wealth in Singapore a little clearer, give it a like and subscribe to Lukebook so you don't miss the next episode. See you in the next one.